Now, more African businesses are driving sustainable economies. The acceleration of these investments is a critical part of achieving Africa's climate-related goals. RMB reports that many corporates and governments in Africa are making great strides in setting and achieving their sustainability objectives and embracing the green economy. Nigel Beck, head of Sustainable Finance and ESG Advisory at RMB, joins us now with more insights. Thank you so much for your time, Nigel. Firstly, how attractive is being an investor in the green energy transition in Africa?
Thanks for having me. So first of all, I think we've seen significant interest from investors who are looking at green products. So it's not just only green, but also kind of social and sustainable. So if you look at the broader sustainable finance market, it's grown 50% year on year in South Africa, and the market on an annual basis stands around 75 billion rand. So if you compare that to the global market, which is about $1.8 trillion, we're a tiny percentage of that, but there's significant opportunity for us to grow in South Africa and Africa more broadly. So what we're seeing is that investors are seeing significant alpha in ESG-related investments, and ESG assets under management are expected to reach around 34 trillion in 2026. So we're definitely seeing strong investor interest in the green energy transition.
Yeah, and in terms of those flows that we are seeing, particularly, the investments that RMB has embarked on, are there specific areas that you find that are really the focus points in terms of that ecosystem, E, S, and G?
Yes, so if we look at, over the last 3 years, we've facilitated 55 billion rand in sustainable and transition finance. So when we talk about facilitation, it's extending our own balance sheet, but it's also crowding in other investors. So it's crowding in asset managers, institutional investors, as well as other banks as part of syndicated loans. If we look at the breakdown, about 50% of that 155 is done into kind of green loans. That's very much focused on renewable energy, green buildings, energy efficiency. About 20% is into sustainability-linked loans, and sustainability-linked loans are a financial structure where there's a margin ratchet linked to certain KPIs or key performance indicators that are of an environmental and social nature. To the extent that you hit a target, you get better pricing. To the extent that you miss a target, you get a pricing penalty. Essentially what it does, it aligns your financial and sustainability strategy. And then at the, on the social side, there's always questions around the social. That's about 8%, focusing very much on the likes of gender-linked bonds, fiber rollout to lower LSMs, and student accommodation. And I think that 8% is something we're trying to focus on and trying to increase that to something more like 20% to give a better blend across kind of the just element of the transition.
Talk to me, because I understand that the sustainable finance business at RMB has only been in existence for about 3 years. Talk to me about the key milestones that you have reached there, and maybe just targets also that you are driving towards.
So when we started the business, and you're 100% right, 3 years ago, we set a target of 200 billion over a 5-year period. So essentially 200 billion on an aggregated basis by 2026. We set interim targets in the first year. In 2022, we wanted to do 25 billion. We achieved very much around that level. I think we did about 26. In 2023, we wanted to do 35 billion. And again, we hit that target pretty much dead on. This year in 2024, we had a target of 40 billion. And we've achieved 90 billion. So what we've seen is the market has now started to scale. Sustainable finance has become very much mainstream, and we're seeing significant opportunity in this space. So if we look at it on an aggregate basis, I mentioned earlier, we've achieved about 155 billion against that 200 billion target. And I think with any with any luck, I think we should hopefully achieve that 200 billion target this financial year, which will be a year in advance.
Nigel, how crucial is it, and also how easy or difficult is it to track the impact of these investments that you are making?
So we're very deliberate in trying to track the impact. So, of our sustainable finance business, one of the things we really want to do is have a real world impact. Depending on the financial products, certain products are easier than others. For example, a project finance, it's relatively easy. It's a limited recourse lend to a specific asset. We can track the information. If we do green buildings, There's also relatively easy, there's green building certificates that talk about, what percentage reduction in kind of embodied energy or water or general energy use. Generally, it has to be above 20%. The sustainability linked loans that I mentioned earlier, we've got specific KPIs and targets. Again, that data is relatively easy to track, and it's often independently verified. And it's becoming much more of a market standard. But what we're trying to do is we're trying to translate these impacts into, for example, real world examples.
Yeah.
So we can talk about rands and cents, we can talk about megawatts, we can talk about carbon dioxide, but what does that mean for the man in the street? How does that impact him? So if we look, for example, at some of the water consumption that we've had, for example, water efficiency that we've done in some of our transactions with our clients, that's enough for 230,000 people to have water for a year in South Africa. Or if we look at the CO2 emissions reduced through our clients, that's enough to run 100,000 buses in South Africa for a year. So those are the real world impacts, and that's something we're quite deliberate in doing, is tracking those impacts.
Well, thank you so much for your time and for your insights there on the role that RMB is playing in the finance of the green energy transition, but also social targets that we do have. Thank you so much for your time. That was Nigel Beck, Head of Sustainable Finance and ESG Advisory at RMB.